Hi, I'm George. I'm the sous chef here at Calke Abbey, and today I'm going to be making hot cross buns in time for Easter. Hot cross buns are something usually people buy from the shop, but I'm going to show you how to make them at home. So first, we're going to start off with 200 mils of semi-skim milk, and we want to get that on about a medium heat, and you just want to heat it up until you can touch it with your finger and you're not scalding your hand. Next, you need to get a pan on the heat and you need 55 grams of unsalted butter, and you just want to put that in and gently melt it. Whilst that's melting, I've got 445 grams of plain flour. You can use strong bread flour, but if you haven't got that in, plain flour is fine. So I've got about 55 grams of cinnamon, nutmeg and ground ginger. You can use fresh nutmeg, but I've got ground nutmeg here. You want to add that to your flour. So once you've added your spices to the flour, you want to set that aside and bring back the milk that you've heated up. In here, I've got 2 packets of dried yeast, and that equates to 14 grams. So I'm going to put this into the warmed milk and just get, wherever I've put it, a whisk. And then I'm just going to whisk this. So once you've whisked your milk, I like to put the sugar into the milk. Some people say you put it in with the flour, but I like to put it into the milk because it just starts the yeast activating. In the bowl, I've just got 55 grams of normal sugar, caster sugar, granulated will do. And you just want to tip that in. And that will start to activate the yeast. It's food for the yeast, so it will start to work, and that's how you'll get the bread to rise. So you want to set that aside. And now the butter is melted. You want to bring back your flour and make a well in the centre. And then you want to get your melted butter and just pour it in. Put that aside. And then your milk and the yeast. And pour that in. Then you want to get a fork and just mix it into a rough dough. Now this mixture is going to look very, very wet, but don't worry about it. So once it starts to come together, just before it fully combines, in here I've got 1 beaten egg, and just add that in. Cool. So once your dough is combined, you want to get some plain flour and just lightly dust the surface. I would put a little bit more on than usual because it is quite a wet dough. And then just, you're going to have to scrape your dough out onto the side. They're going to be happy about cleaning this. So start working it into the flour just to get it a bit drier. And you need to knead it for about 10 minutes. But I'm not going to knead it for 10 minutes here. I am, but we're going to fast forward this bit. So, after 10 minutes of kneading it, the dough should start to look quite smooth. And I think we're about there. So as you can see, the dough is really smooth. And it's quite springy. When you press it, it starts to spring back on itself. You need to get a bowl and just lightly flour it. It's all right, you just really need to flour the bottom. And you want to place your dough in there, and you need to leave that to rest in a warm place for about an hour now. Right, so after an hour, the dough should have doubled in size. And what you want to do with this is you want to knock it back. So what I mean by knocking it back is you want to knock the air out of it again. So you knock that back, and then I've got 55 grams of raisins and 30 grams of mixed peel. Now you can do whatever you want. You can do cranberries, you can do raisins, sultanas, you can do orange zest, mixed peel, it's up to you. You can even do chocolate if you want. But I've got 55 grams of raisins and about 30 grams of mixed peel. So I'm just going to put them on top of the dough and start working that in. Just keep folding the dough over just so you've got an even spread across all the dough. So once you've incorporated the raisins and the mixed peel, you need to divide it into 12. This mixture makes 12. If you can half it, it'll make 6. Unless you want to make bigger ones, then you could make them bigger. But what I like to do is roll it into a sausage shape, because you can never really tell how much you're ripping off unless you weigh it. So if you roll it into a kind of an equal sausage, and then you can just kind of mark it with your finger or a knife, and then you can kind of see. So then you tear them off at each little mark, and then you roughly going to get about the same size. It really doesn't matter if not, you know, these are homemade. If they look a bit rustic, I think that's better, to be honest. And if you don't get 12, you don't. So once you've divided them into 12, I'd set most of them aside and just leave 2. And then you need to get them into a spherical shape. And a good trick to do this is to get it in your hand and make it like almost like a cage, and just roll it round underneath. So you're putting pressure on the top, and that makes it into a ball. So you need to do all 12 of these. So once you've rolled them all into balls, you need to get a tray. I've lightly greased this tray. This has got a slip mat on, but baking parchment will do exactly the same, and you just want to lightly oil it to help it stop sticking. So I just place them on the tray, equally apart from each other. Like that. Just give them a bit of space because they are going to grow. And once you've got them like that, you need to leave them to prove for another 12-15 minutes until they've doubled in size. So if that does take a little bit longer, there's no issue with that. All right, so back into a warm place. So these have been proving for 15 minutes. And as you can see, they've doubled in size. Now, it's the all-famous cross. So what I'd like to do is just pat them down slightly. You don't want to pat them down too much because you don't want to like push all the air out of them. So just give them a slight pat down. And then I've got a piping bag here, and it's got 2 tablespoons of plain flour mixed in with about 1 tablespoon, 2 tablespoons of water. You really need to judge it yourselves. It's quite hard, but you need to mix it into quite a thick paste. So it's thick enough to pipe, but not too thin that it's going to run off the hot cross bun. And then the best thing to do is just literally start piping it across. And as you can see, it can be quite tricky to work with, but like I said earlier, you know, this is home cooking. Doesn't matter if it's perfect, just as long as it's across. And then just pipe them across. So now you put the cross on all of them. They need to go into the oven for around about 15 to 20 minutes. I like to have the oven on 185, around about that. If you're judging by your oven, our ovens here are quite powerful. So I really like to check it around the 10-minute mark just to make sure. But at home, you'll probably be looking at 15 to 20 minutes on 180 to 185. So the hot cross buns have been in now for about 15 minutes. Just bring them across. As you can see, they're nice and golden with the cross in the middle. If you want a proper defined cross, you probably could make the paste a bit thicker, but I kind of like them this way. To tell that they're cooked, if you just pick them up and tap on the bottom, they'll sound hollow. To finish them off, just to make them look absolutely gorgeous, I like to get some runny honey and just literally glaze the top of the bun. And it also just adds a lovely sweet. And there you go, the perfect hot cross bun.